Welcome back to the PFC podcast. The views and opinions you are about to hear are the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of anyone else. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome back to the PFC podcast. This is Dennis, and this episode was recorded with the sponsorship and support of the Special Operations Medical Association. Thank you guys very much, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.
Afternoon all. Great to be back at SOMA. Thank you for the invitation to come and present. My co-presenter, Colonel Paul Parker, a long-time SOMA stalwart, can't be here today, unfortunately, due to commitments back home. But anyway, I've been dispatched to come and deliver this presentation in full. So today will be a thematic review of the use of mobile surgery to support mobile operations across the land campaigns of the last 300 years or so. Now, we're both surgical historians. We like reading into the past. Paul himself may actually be one of the relics. He provides a great oral history of surgery and its development across the British Army in the last 40 years, which has spanned his career. Today, we'll be looking at battle maps and personal accounts and reflections of surgical teams who were there at these campaigns to see what lessons we can draw and take forward into the LSCO of the future. Whether it's LSCO or soft operations, there's going to be a lot of common problems that will keep reoccurring, regardless of the fancy technology we might have nowadays. We may end up taking reversionary approaches, which we have to draw on past techniques for. There's a lot of ground to cover here today, but we're going to focus on pertinent points. It'll largely be land-based, but we'll aim to cover off some of the key air and naval contributions here. Surgery, of course, does not exist in isolation. There is key preceding resuscitative care and following rehabilitative care, which we must also take note of. But these areas have been nicely covered off in the conference so far, so today we will largely focus on mobile surgery. Okay, so we'll take these key lessons, understand the current and coming battle space, and look to integrate these two together, and offer some blue sky thinking as to how we will provide mobile surgery in this era of mosaic warfare. We cannot be a drag factor as medicine in its mobility and warfare in its mobility goes left, right, up, down, underground, in the sky. We'll have to follow suit. As Churchill boldly stated, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And dare I say, we must apply and continue to apply these lessons. Otherwise, we really haven't learnt them. The Walker dip is well known to everyone in this room. And war surgery really has to be one of the factors in military medicine that's at the greatest risk of deteriorating outside of LSCO conditions. And LSCO is nothing new conceptually. We've fought conflicts on mass scale for thousands, tens of thousands of years. We may have new technologies and increasing lethality. We aim to not do that on the medical side, though. Hard-fought lessons learned by our forebearers need to be relearned now, early, before we get to difficult positions. We need to be anticipatory. Reversionary shifts may be hard to stomach now, but we must be strict to do the most for the most. So a number of our distinguished forebears have had the foresight to record their experience of being surgeons in LSCO and on surgical teams in LSCO. It's not just about the surgeons. Many of these books only made one edition. The top left ones, really, you'll see the ones that have made multiple prints. Tends to be published from posthumous papers that people have tried to record for their families and their colleagues when they get to the end of their life. These books, importantly, not just cover the surgical aspects of care provision, but also key drag factors from medical and surgical factors itself, the med logistics, med command and control. These are the key enablers of our care. And the books also consider the human cost of operating in such conditions. Quite a broad contrast from the civilian practice many of our consultant surgeons are engaged in nowadays. So academia is not just journal publications, it's books, and lots of these are single edition and hard to source. We need to digitize these rare texts and try and distribute them as much as we can amongst the military. We're very fortunate in the British military and our Defence Medical Services to have a library service where we have these books available. We just need to push them out and ensure that everyone takes up on board the key lessons. So institutional memory, it's passed surgeon to surgeon through training courses such as the MOST, Military Operational Surgical Training Course, NATO's SOS course, and the exams and phases of surgical training as we develop. Whilst we strive to preserve lessons from war surgery, they can invariably end up watered down or distorted quite unintentionally. This image here, nicely AI generated, denotes the current and up-and-coming surgeons shaking hands with those, the era of mobile operations. I'm going to say the mid-century operations. After that, we've largely gone firm comparatively, with a few interspersed periods of increased mobility. Now, medical staff had travelled with campaigning militaries from the Crusades and the Romans throughout the medical conflicts, largely financed by the aristocracy or rich people, taking their own physicians on campaign with them. Capabilities, frankly, were limited and of their time. Little remains to document, but rest assured they were quite minimal back then. But let's go back to where mobile surgery is widely touted to have initially began. Dominique Larrey, aghast at death on the battlefield, chose to initiate the ambulance volante. From around 1972, the French Revolutionary Wars, Larrey took the surgeon to the patient with his ambulance volante. Long hand carries became short duration, horse-drawn buggies, and the mobile surgery wagons actually allowed primitive surgeries, largely hemorrhage control orientated, to be performed at the scene of wounding where able. A bit simpler in those days, as they didn't have to lug around anaesthetic machines, huge gas canisters, and excessive amounts of kit, because there was only so much they would do in those days. Vitally, Larrey didn't just make one improvement and sit on the laurels. He saw what comes before and what comes after. He developed a comprehensive system of instruction for the drivers, the litter bearers, and the surgical teams to perform the on-the-spot surgery as needed. He pushed triage, including, crucially, the expectant categorization, knowing that some cases truly were forlorn. Now, ambulance volante was not just a Scotch cabinet on wheels here. Some operations were performed in the back of these rolling cabins, rolling coffins. I couldn't imagine operating in the back of one of these, but it brought a new capability to the battlefield. There were also bigger caravans inspired by Silk Road trading caravans and gypsy-style wagons that could transport people for longer durations. Okay. We also want to talk about Guthrie, one of Britain's finest surgeons during the Napoleonic Wars. Guthrie took forward a lot of surgical lessons to the Crimean law, but in terms of mobility, hospital carts was his application of the ambulance volante. He even had some surgeons carry instruments and dressings in their field satchels on the side of their horses so they could perform on-the-spot surgery. So he took it even lighter. And McGregor, the chief surgeon of the British military around this time, was instrumental in deploying medical teams to Belgian cities in the aftermath of the early 19th century campaigns to provide treatment centres along the route back to the UK from campaigns like Waterloo. Crimean conflict followed on. Military nursing revolutions there are well known to many, but it was a Russian there called Nikolai Pirogov who introduced structured forward surgical teams. Up until that point, surgical care, especially in the Russian Empire, had been seen as less scientific and more of a craftsmanship piece. And the Russians actually put out mobile military barracks, acknowledging its same distances back to their fixed hospital facilities in the Crimean campaign. And our famous engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel even designed a prefab hospital himself. This didn't see any action, really, and the seeds were sown. Come to the American Civil War, and the Letterman system was the next big advance for mobile surgical care. This was taking the whole surgical care pathway on the roads and staggering it in an established manner. This was the first formal sequencing of battlefield care, really quite closely reminiscent to our roles 1 through to 4. The Civil War saw huge formations make extensive advances, retreats, and indeed defences in situ. The reach of the conflict was significant here. Lines of communication span weeks, and interfighting within the states meant that you didn't necessarily have the support of your own local facilities. Cycling forwards to World War I, we did have largely static warfare with an established system of rear echelon hospitals in long-standing tender facilities and regional hospitals even further on. Hospital trains and indeed ships were used, and these did have operating theatres. So treatment in motion was and surgery in motion was indeed a factor. Most mobile facilities were the Unit 8 posts and to some degree the advanced dressing stations. But as I mentioned, the static nature of the warfare meant there was less need for surgical facilities proper to be mobile. Well, the kit had to be man-packed or horse-drawn, and hence capabilities of the mobile elements were quite limited. A key lesson to draw, though, from the World War I surgical account, so that while surgery may have not been as available forward as it could have been and as portable, perioperative care and resuscitation is absolutely vital. Getting people to the fit state, ready for surgery, is key. Many people were recycled from what we would now consider Role 2 and Role 3 facilities back to the front. So back to specifically talking of surgery itself as mobile, the French invented the Guthrie Auto-Chir ambulance, which was a 5-wagon mobile surgical facility that could be taken down, moved and set up quite quickly, had power outlets and heating. It was used to good effect at Verdun, where the embattled French in their fortress ended up dislocated after the Germans broke in, and they could rapidly deploy surgical teams to provide care. Now, in the Middle Eastern campaigns of World War I, we saw a lot more motion, and the Australians had some quite broad-reaching cavalry operations, including the Shiva. They developed a surgical operating car, a single operating car, where they could provide surgical treatment. They took this here just in a single car to mirror the operation so that it was not a drag. I think the concern was that if you split the equipment across multiple vehicles and one broke down, especially with these very primitive automobiles, you could lose quite a lot of capability. And being the desert, facilities were by nature quite a long way away. Coming through to the Spanish Civil War, very important to mention, immortalized by writers such as George Orwell, nationalist elements fought Republican forces, with many military surgeons and military medical services sticking with the nationalists. It was civilian surgeons that were drawn into the Republican forces, and they were rather thrown at the deep end, with limited surgical education on trauma care and limited access to war surgery literature than their forebears. Mobile surgical units were established to move with the fluid battle fronts amongst the Republican troops. This revolutionary aspect of rewriting society apparently also extended to medical care. They were free from the dogmatic constraints of established military medical policy. International volunteers flooded in, as did aid. Okay, come World War II, mobile operations were initially very backward for the Allies, beating a retreat to the English Channel, and many wounded had to be left behind in order to give them a chance of survival and give the surviving troops a chance to get away. Beaten back and struggling, the Allies looked to strike back where the Allied Axis powers were at their most stretch, and this initially was in the Western Desert in North Africa. Fighting columns from Long Range Desert Group and later the SAS operated long-range patrols to wreak havoc. A well-detailed book on medical care to the SAS in World War II in the desert was by Malcolm James Pladle, one of the doctors there. He recounts some of the struggles keeping the troops alive, where the casualties were truly unthinkable and the surgery was a long way away. I think one of the key sentiments outlined in his memoir is about ultimate acceptance. You can only do what you can do, but the nature of operations will ultimately determine what may or may not happen to the casualties. A lot of risk sits with medics, not just with the doctors. So it's about supporting them as well as we can. And then Stanley Aylett's book, Surgeon at War, gives an account of surgical movement through campaigns spanning North Africa, Italy, and up into Europe. From quite tepid civilian surgeons, they were catapulted into being into military service with long periods without operating, and then hugely demanding periods where they could operate for 4 days straight. Pretty hard to rehearse for. They found themselves variably mounted, and they did experiment quite a lot, and a few times found themselves cut off and actually in front of their own lines, nearly captured. Now into the real meat of it. Mobile surgical support for airborne operations. So the unfortunately ill-fated Market Garden operation to seize 3 bridges over the River Rhine, the farthest reach being the British Airborne Division at Arnhem. This was just 3 months following the breach into Normandy. So I'll reference here exceptional books on Wings of Healing, the British history of the British Airborne Medical Services and Red Crosses and Berets, which chart the medical laydown at Arnhem. The plan was for the field ambulances accompanying each brigade to establish in the local hospitals as soon as possible. They had to reduce the equipment dropping and anticipated just using the kit in the hospitals. However, fierce fighting around the drop zones meant that only one of the field ambulances, incomplete, made it to the hospital it wanted to get to. This was 16 parachute field ambulance, and they ultimately were in a hospital that changed hands multiple times during the course of the battle. Surgeon at Arms by Alexander Lippmann Kessel is a great account of his work in the hospital. And then looking back at on the center of your picture on the bottom right, you can see there used to be pocket area. One of the books covering that area is by a GP later surgeon, Stuart Mawson, who conveyed really the chaos of the mobile operation breaking down, and surgeons and medical teams being crammed into houses in a ring, and ultimately being smashed to bits, and just trying to make do and really improvise the care. They were only expected to hold on for 2 days, but ended up holding on for several more. Really was testament to their improvisation. The divisional ADMS, Colonel Graham Warwick, went to great lengths to ensure the wounded could still be evacuated back to civilian hospitals. And in fact, when most of the division was captured, the medical staff went into captivity with them to provide a prison of war hospital. And later, many of them escaped back across into Allied lines to continue the fight. So you can see here on the right-hand side the dispersal of the medical facilities for the 2 brigades caught up in that area, or 1.5 brigades. Okay. Up Varsity, jumping the Robes, and not perturbed by the destruction of the airborne division at Arnhem, the Allied planned Varsity to spear into Germany with a lot more success this time, and advances were actually runaway here, sometimes medical facilities being left behind. David Clark's Descent into War outlines their air landing field ambulance, following up rapid ground advances. Medical care cannot necessarily define operational decision-making. The advantage needs to be pushed home, but we still have a duty of care, obviously, to our troops. In the Jungle War, Ord Wingate and the Chindits had a rather different view of medical facilities and medical staffing. They had no room or no time for medical staff. They recognised the huge logistical drag of medical care and the difficulties of evacuation in the jungle, and really just chose to distance themselves. Batty's book about being a surgeon in the Jungle War explained the common frustrations of the surgical forward units and the delayed evacuations, and therefore the aged surgical rooms they were having to deal with when they did receive cases. We were really privileged in those days to have British military hospitals dotted around the globe on a permanent basis for people to stock off on the way home. Really long lines of communications. That obviously all closed 25 years ago for us now, and really we're dependent on ramp arrangements, reception arrangements for military patients, which we should perhaps go into more detail on the use of foreign facilities as stopgaps. Certainly Stratovac will not be an inbuilt capability. Guerrilla medical operations. So across Europe, partisan movements were supported and directed by surgical detachments. Surgical support to mobile operations cannot just be at the time, it needs to be preceding large-scale operations and also following up. So we'll skip over some of the more commonly known experiences. We'll look at the Falklands War as well. Britain's war to take back the Falkland Islands, thousands of miles from home. The Royal Four was way back in the UK, and the Royal 2 and 3 shipborne facilities. Forward surgical teams dispatched to multiple areas here. Really, the medical coordination here by the medical commander on the scene, Surgeon Captain Rick Jolly, via helicopter oversight, was essential. The facility got fired on in the middle of nowhere, so it can only be deliberate, frankly. But they achieved great survival rates in very challenging conditions. Okay. Okay, so in the Gulf War, we see armored-based core plus level maneuvers with large level frog leap operations. The question here is that what if you take mass casualties? Do the facilities stay behind? Do you cache the casualties? Who looks after them? Thankfully, not significant casualties. And the accounts of the second Iraq War seems to be okay again, so long as you don't get bogged down. Then in Mali, in more recent years, the Ground Maneuver Surgical Group took over surgical care on the road for, again, timelines that were heavily extended. where radiological imaging was present. Questions over how defensible these facilities were. Luckily, a reasonably low threat environment, and a time where to suffer casualties was perhaps politically not so acceptable. In the Russia-Ukraine war, we see targeting of medical personnel extensively with timelines that are extremely extended and aged injuries coming in. Rheinmetall has pushed out the idea of a completely mobile military hospital that can just get up and run. Still looks quite complicated to disconnect at this point. Okay. Air defense is probably something we need to think about if we're going to be tolerated, if we're going to exist in such huge sizes. Or later, what I'll propose is breaking down even further. In the era of Mosaic warfare, we could see contractile or expandable systems of fighting rather than fronts. And med needs to be staged for contractile or expansile fighting with a zonal Mosaic system rather than the traditional linear Roll 1 to 4 system. Trains and use of as strategical evacuation facilities may be coming back into the fore now. There should be surgical operating capability on there. So with these extended timelines, we still may need the ability to punch forward and deliver time-critical interventions. Forward surgical teams are something we've always been able to do on a limited basis for low-profile essential operations that are high risk. It's a high-profile target for the enemy. So here's an example of a small person team. It's really promising to see that the SOS team, Tiger team levels are moving towards formalization. I think that's something that will be able to be expanded through conventional forces as well. Big drags here being blood availability, how to hold, whether we can cache casualties with other people, whether we can offload some of the medical responsibility. What do civilians do? They have some similar concepts of being able to drive in and drive out hospitalized facilities and being able to set up temporary facilities. So we already talked about the key implications of the current battle space. I'm going to skip over this as we're running short on time. So I think medics will have to apply the same process of survivability that every troop will have to. Big tented facilities, even extensive ground-based air defenses could be ruined just with one attack. So tents, I think, are a remnant of a different time. It can't be a camping holiday. So we need to somehow minimize our time from wounding to surgery with consultant-level care without exposing ourselves to being wiped out quickly. We need to be polyvalent. We need to employ the full range of the MDT. We need to be minimalist in equipment, but maximalist in capability. Preserve our equipment as well as we can with good choices. So physically and conceptually, there's some points. Morally, we have to think about how we're going to manage those who have less of a chance of surviving, how we prioritize cases, how we queue patients for operations. We need to disperse, dig in, go underground where we can, use these austere, resuscitative, armored teams to punch forward where we really do need to deliver key interventions. And we need to be able to defend ourselves. We need to have a reputation to be able to defend ourselves. Dispersal, establishing a mesh net against Mosaic warfare. Casualties will happen a lot in the rear. So I think we could try and mirror that, try and break down our facilities, single surgeon teams. Yes, it's another single point of failure, but it could give us greater reach and therefore minimize the time from wounding to surgery. Digging in, it's been done extensively. Gibraltar, the Channel Islands, underground car parks are going to be a key one, especially in the cities. It's a big opportunity. Pre-dug in shipping containers as well, obviously a lot deeper than that. Defense, what could we have in terms of air defense if we're going to be there en masse? I think the best thing is just to not be detected and not need to defend yourself. Emissions and identification, we probably need to work on capabilities that are not going to demand such a power input and remove things that are going to identify us as a high-value target. Capability extenders. Can we start bringing in registrars, residents a lot earlier? Can we get ODPs or UK CRNA equivalents? Can we get medics to assist surgeons? We need to start thinking about these questions now rather than in quick time when the need may arise. Okay, better integration of medicine into logistics, and medicine has a huge logistic drag. So we've already talked about our key inflow issues and the ability to, if we're going to expose surgical teams to use heavily armoured but rapid facilities to do so. Talked about generalist training approaches and people all needing to operate at the top of their licenses, and our team makeup given our need to disperse. Decision making needs to be rehearsed and robust. We'll continue to do that through courses. Derogations for wartime conditions need to be communicated and instilled from a young age to build those decision loops in our heads. Ultimately, everything's going to be a MASCAL and everything's going to come with resource limitations. We need to be very concise and careful about how we use our resources. Outflow may not be there. We may need to dump and case our casualties with medics or not even non-medics looking after them. Movements, centipede approaching rather than not just having one foot on the ground, just to enable we always have a firm base and always somewhere to take casualties to, so our duty of care is maintained. There must be a middle ground between larger, more fixed surgical facilities versus lots of these small mesh net of surgical teams, and we need to find that and establish a way to decide that dependent on the operation at hand. Command and control, I think, may be lost at times if we disperse. That's a balance we're going to have to find for clinical, where we tend to want to hand over and collaborate quite a lot. Big drag factors being blood products, anesthetic volume, sterilizing equipment. Are we going to be boarding the equipment in our own kettles? I don't know. It could come down to that. And like I said, extremely judicious use of equipment and expectation management for cases that may not have a good outcome. Okay, so we've talked through a lot of those. All right, happy to take any questions or external points from the room now.
No question, just a comment. That was amazing. Is there any opportunity to steal this fantastic presentation from you and promulgate it further? And if so, how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure, Alex. I'll come give you my email at the end so we can talk.
Hi, Chris Jackson, Army ER doc and fellow old book enthusiast. Y'all have a suggested reading list that y'all can kind of keep as like a living document? We can't do a similar thing in a book club that I run.
Yeah, so our Defence Medical Services Library's got a catalogue basically of everything they've acquired. They don't have some of the rarer books. That's just been through sleuthing on eBay and forums. But yeah, there's a good list I can get for you if you'd like.
That's it for today's podcast. Make sure to go to our website, www.prolongedfieldcare.org. Check out our free downloads and a ton of other helpful information. Grab a bag of our fresh roasted PFC coffee, links in the description below, and stay on the bleeding edge of combat and austere medicine. This is Dennis for the PFC podcast. Out.